So, everybody, good morning once again. And today we have a very, very long sermon, but we'll see what we can do to kind of fit the whole text, okay? So, before we get into it, just a question. How many of you would consider yourselves goal oriented people? I know for myself that I am one of those people. I'm goal oriented. I know during job interviews, that's always the first thing people say, diba? I'm hardworking, I'm loyal, and I'm goal oriented, no? But there are certain things or phrases that come into mind when you say goal oriented. Some people say, I do whatever it takes to achieve my goal. Others say, by hook or by crook. Or the end justifies the means. So, bahala na if I do something wrong, as long as I achieve the goal, pwede na. So the question is, how far would you go to achieve your goal? For some, they go through questionable means just to achieve the goal. There are some examples I have written here, examples in real life. Some people I know and some people I've seen would forge signatures to escape punishment or to achieve a goal. I remember when I was younger and I had really, really bad grades, our teachers would send us letters to our parents. And our parents are supposed to sign that to acknowledge that they know we're doing poorly. So to escape the wrath of my parents, I would forge their signatures and then hand the letter back the next day. The other one would be probably some people I know or I've seen or witnessed or heard about. Would you flirt or even fornicate with clients just to make a sale? Would you change data just to qualify for loans in the bank or for clients to qualify for loans in the bank? Would you twist facts or events to win the favor of people? Would you abuse your power or position or use bullying or intimidation to coerce obedience? Would you guilt trip others to get compliance? These are questions that we are supposed to reflect on because today we're going to continue the drama between Jacob and Laban. And really, this is extended all the way from the drama of Jacob and Esau. So, if you really think about it, the whole theme of this life of Jacob, ever since Jacob got born, even up to now, we just see a consistent theme of what not to do in the faith. Alright, so when we observe Jacob and the people around him, all we see are bad examples. We see anti-gospel examples. We see examples of how not to live. And the Bible, ironically, has what we call character studies. Okay, so the Bible provides us with so many characters so we can do character studies to learn what to do and what not to do. So some examples. So in the Old Testament, we've got, of course, these people. In the New Testament, we've got people like Judas, we've got people like Diotrephes, Ananias, and Sapphira, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so there's a lot of character studies. And so last week, we looked at the symptoms of an envious person. So I kind of changed the sermon title last week, The Examples of the Envious. Today, it's going to be the marks of manipulation. So we're going to go from Genesis 30, verse 25, all the way to Genesis 30, verse 21. That's 39 verses, but we'll go through them at a really good pace. So, Genesis 30, verse 25. As soon as Rachel had born Joseph, so remember they had a competition before who could birth most kids. So Rachel finally gave birth to Joseph. Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, that I may go. For you know the service that I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it was increased greatly or abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own house also?" So what happened here? Jacob's finally done with the 7 years of service. He now wants to live his life apart from Laban. The 14 years worth of wages for 2 daughters has already been so extravagant. In fact, 7 years of servitude, or an additional 7 years of servitude, born out of deception, was very costly for Jacob. So now he's thinking, I want to do my own thing. I want to live apart from Laban. I want to provide for my own household, because for the past 14 years, his wages went to Laban. So he was essentially working only for maybe an allowance, maybe some food allowance, maybe for groceries, but there was no profits that really went to him. It all went to Laban for the 14 years total of wages for both Leah and then for Rachel. So he wants his own profits now. And look at what Laban has done. Laban actually sinned. He used divination to find out this whole thing, this whole blessing. Where did the blessing come from and all of that stuff? Now, do we really think that Laban believes what he said? That it was Yahweh God who blessed him? Or is it possible that he was actually just saying things, flowery words, sweet words, to keep Jacob from leaving? So we'll get to that in a bit. But again, reminder, what is the nature of idolatry? We learned this last week. The nature of worship / idolatry. The nature of worship is to use everything in your resources, your power, your skills, your talents, your attributes, your relationships, everything, to serve the object of worship. So when it comes to idolatry, you're using everything in your power, your skills, attributes, etc., to serve your idol. All right? And so what was happening here? Laban was using even God's name just to keep Jacob from leaving. And that is the nature of idolaters. Idolaters will use even God's name to serve their own idols. Is Laban the only one guilty of this? No. Do you remember what happened with Jacob before? When Jacob was tricking his father to get the birthright and the blessing from Esau? When his father asked, how could you have succeeded so fast? I mean, it takes time to hunt for animals to prepare the soup. What did Jacob say? He said, the Lord your God gave me success. So Jacob was not Laban is not the only one guilty of this. Jacob was also guilty of this. Idolaters are not afraid. They would dare use God's name to further serve their own agenda. If you think about it, if you think about today, we talked about the prosperity gospel a lot. Now, the prosperity gospel isn't really even about money. Not really. It's not really about prosperity limited to health or wealth. The essence of the prosperity gospel, the essence of the prosperity gospel is that people go to God for stuff. That's the essence of it. What are some? I'll name some and I'll give some examples of famous preachers, teachers, etc., who are guilty of this, who are known to be guilty of this. So obviously the first one is health and wealth, right? So health. There's a guy named Todd Bentley. He's a fake, false healer. He actually kicked people, hurt people, physically hurt and abused, punched, kicked people just to pretend that they were being healed by God. All right? There's actually a documentary done by a guy named Darren Brown. You can search this. Darren Brown. The title is Miracles for Sale. Just search it. YouTube it. Miracles for Sale space Brown. And you can watch the whole thing. This is a guy who hired a surfer dude to pretend to be a healer, a fake false healer, and he proved that people would actually believe a surfer guy. They just made a nice website for him, etc., etc. So first is health. Another example is wealth. And we know Peter Popoff, the most famous one is Peter Popoff. Of course, there's a lot of people like Benny Hinn, etc., etc. But Peter Popoff was actually found out to use an earpiece, and then he would have conchabo or people he connived with in the miracle healing, tents, who would feed him information with an earpiece, with a radio, and his wife was in the back of the tent with a radio transmitter feeding information. So he's pretending to get information from God, but actually it was his earpiece. We've got ego strokes. So health, wealth, ego. The most common person here is Joel Osteen, who will tell you everything you want to hear just so you feel better about yourself. You feel fulfilled, loved, accepted. You feel like your ego is being stroked, etc., etc. So health, wealth, ego. How about fame or wanting to be first or fame? In the Bible, we've got Diotrephes, and today, one person who has been who was exposed with this is Mark Driscoll. I used to follow this guy. I used to love this guy until he went down the deep end. He was very double-minded. When he was a Calvinist, he was a Calvinist because he had favor among the Calvinists. When he lost favor from the Calvinists, he rejected Calvinism and became a full-fledged Pentecostal Arminian because he was getting favor from the Pentecostal Arminians. So this guy was double-minded. He did not really have integrity when it comes to his doctrine and theology. He flip-flopped his doctrines according to what would give him fame or favor from people. Lust. People go to God for lust. A lot of people use God's name to feed their lustful desires. We know this recently. The biggest explosion in this century is Ravi Zacharias. And in slower or lower or smaller cases, we've got cults who use religion and the name of God to manipulate people into sleeping with them. Or what about justifying sin in general? One big example of this is Tullian, the grandson of Billy Graham. I don't know how to really pronounce his name. Tullian Chavagin or Chivijan, who actually committed adultery, and then he eventually divorced his wife and then married his mistress. So his current wife is his former mistress. So these people are people who dared to use God just to further their own idols and agendas. Idolaters will use God's name to serve their idols. And make no mistake, mark my words, if they dare to use God, they will surely use you. So we have to be careful of these people. Now Laban himself did not really worship God. He had his own gods or little statues or idols. We'll find more about that later on. But he was used to lying, and he used sweet words to manipulate and deceive Jacob. So he said, I learned from divination that your God blessed me. He's not saying I worship God. He's not saying I love God or God is great. He's just saying, I acknowledge it was your God who blessed me. He was saying nice, sweet words to keep Jacob from leaving. More sweet words was wages. He said, name your wages and I will give it. Sound familiar? Wasn't this where everything began? Do you guys remember Genesis 25 verse 15? What did Laban tell Jacob? He said, because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages be. So what happened? The truth is this. Jacob was a kinsman. He was a relative, therefore he was a guest. Therefore, Laban should have been more generous with his arrangement to Jacob. But instead of being, like, for example, if there was a family member who visited your house and he's a guest in your house, can you imagine the host saying, because you're family, you're a guest. Come on, you're welcome here. Therefore, whatever you eat tonight at dinner, you have to pay your share. Like, that's not what you'd expect. You'd expect people to say, because you're family, you're my cousin, your first degree cousin, you're a guest. Don't pay anything here. Come on, you're a guest. Just eat what you want. So Laban said, because you're family, pay your own. He degraded the relationship between him and Jacob from guest and family and kinsman to employment. And that is where it all began, the whole wages issue. And he's doing it again today. Name your wages and I will give it. So Laban, his mind is preoccupied with how to get ahead, how to get more, how to trick, how to maneuver, how to outsmart, how to manipulate. He's done it before. When Abraham's servant arrived, you already see a trailer of his intentions. And then when Jacob finally arrived, he used his flowery words, surely you are my kinsman, grand gestures, exaggeration, etc., etc. And now he's doing it again. You're my kinsman. What shall be your wages? Now, what was the response of Jacob? Again, it's one manipulator trying to manipulate another manipulator. So these two people are manipulators, all right? So today, again, the title of the sermon would be The Marks of Manipulation. Jacob responded not by saying, I see what you're doing, I'm trying to expose you, I'm going to confront this manipulation right now. No, what did Jacob do? He fought fire with fire. He was being manipulated, so he tried to re-manipulate or manipulate over the manipulation. All right? So look at his response. Jacob's response lacked respect. He kind of attacked Laban, and one of the signs of a manipulator is to criticize people. So he criticized Laban, he put himself above Laban, he demeaned Laban, and that's an emotional tactic. What did he say? He uses God as well for his own credit. So let's read Jacob's response, verses 29 to 30. I'm going to put emphasis. You yourself know how I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also? It's kind of like saying, you really grew in the Lord. Praise God for my discipleship, right? You really got to know the scriptures because of my leadership and teaching. It was really God who blessed you through me. So that's Jacob's tactic. There's a difference between a sincere, legitimate accomplishment of God's glory with humility versus humble bragging. So it's the whole people grow because I'm great. People are blessed, I want my cut. People are comforted, I want my praise. All right, so there's a way to do that. So manipulators are itching for their cut. You know the phrase, piece of the pie? Now there's a pie, and all the pie, all the glory, all the praise, all the honor should go to God. All the credit, all the blessings should go to God. Manipulators want a piece of God's pie, and they're itching for that. They're not going to be obvious about it. Look at Jacob. He said, the Lord has blessed you wherever I turn. Right? So there's this God, but really it's me. But really God, but really me. So what do? They use lip service. What is lip service? You serve God with your lips. But that's it. Just the lips. And it's actually double talk. Now what happened next? Verse 31. Laban, unfazed by this, so they're trying to manipulate one another, he said, what shall I give you? So Jacob responded, you shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. So it's like Jacob is saying, he's not really saying I want to leave. He's saying, I want to leave, but really, if you offer me something better, gain. All right? So he says, let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb and spotted and speckled among all the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later, when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled, spotted, or etc., the black goats among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen. Laban said, good, let it be as you have said. But that day, Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. So they're really trying to outsmart one another, these manipulators. It's so funny, so ironic. So essentially, here's what happened. Jacob said, I want to leave for the money. Laban says, no, Jacob, I'm not done using you. I want to profit from you more. So Jacob says, well, in that case, you want to profit from me more? I want my cut of the profit. So they're trying to manipulate one another, and they're not really being forthright. Jacob was using his leaving as a kind of bargaining tool, And it's so ironic, it's laughably ironic, that Jacob said, my honesty will answer for me later. So here's a common trait for manipulators. Con men audaciously speaks of their honesty, of their integrity, that, you can trust me. You really can. But actually, you can't. Liars will say, I don't lie. Cheaters will say, I don't cheat, obviously. All right? So Laban says yes, but he finds other ways to steal, cheat, manipulate the situation, to steal the sheep and the flock from Jacob. All right, so let's explain it kind of clearly. They're both trying to manipulate each other. Jacob pastured Laban's flock before, so he knew the quantity of the striped, speckled, black, spotted sheep and goat and lamb. Okay, so this is not a small amount. Jacob's was basically saying, if you lose me, you lose a lot. I'm responsible for all this growth. Okay, so if you really want to keep me, you gotta pay a high price. And what's the price? All the speckled, all this, all that. So just by knowing already the condition of Laban's flock, he wasn't asking for a small pittance for his wages. He's asking for a substantial amount of Laban's flock. So he kinda was quote unquote blackmailing Laban. All right? Either you give me a huge amount or you lose me, the guy responsible for everything that you have. And by the way, it's God. Okay? It's God and me. So, are you gonna fight this? So Laban is like, okay, I'm outmatched in this area. I'm gonna outmaneuver him in a different area. So Jacob said, all the striped spotted black goes to me. So what did Laban do? Sure. And then he got all the spotted and etc. and kept them with his sons and had a 3 days journey, meaning it was very far. You had to travel 3 days before you would get to the secret hideout place where Laban kept the flock with his sons. So, what are some marks of manipulation? Manipulators will use flowery words that sound good, but their intention is really to harm. Remember what Laban did? Look at Laban's words. Jacob's tactic is different. It's to attack, to criticize, and then to put himself above. Laban's style is flowery, they'll butter you up, but then the tactic is hidden. Alright, so he used flowery words. Do you remember what Laban said before? When Jacob woke up, hey, how come my wife isn't Rachel? How come it's Leah? He goes to Laban, right? What have you done to me? What in the world is this? There was a switcheroo. And what did Laban say? Jacob, I'm really sorry, Hannah. It's just tradition and all of that stuff. Really sorry, but you know what? Finish the week. So it sounded more like an apologetic hangyo kind of, but it was a veiled threat. He's saying, finish the week, meaning all the men are here. You really want to disrespect the bride and me, the patriarch, and all the men here present? You want to really do that? You want to put your life on the line for that? Because we can kill you for that legitimately. So he sounded more like an apology, but it was actually a veiled threat. Here he's saying flowery words, sure, yeah, those wages, I'll give it all to you. But actually, he had something else in mind. Alright, so con artists and manipulators will not be obvious. They will use flowery words combined with deceptive actions. So beware flowery words. When they compliment, when they flatter, when they're so sure, anything for you, basta ikaw. And we already know this, right? When people say, pare, ang gwapo mo today. You already know, oh no, what do you want, bro? What is it? You want to borrow money? You want to ask a favor? Just tell me straight. Right? We know that, but manipulators are more subtle. Okay? They're not obvious, but they will be inconsistent with their actions. We know this, especially, people who say, guys who say, I just want to be friends. But sends chocolates, sends flowers, private messaging, FaceTime. But always, I want to be friends. So words and actions are inconsistent. Later on, Jacob will also be guilty of this. He will be just as inconsistent with Laban. Verse 27. What's the response of Jacob? Look at the irony. Laban hid everything. Laban took all the striped stuff. And Jacob knows this because he arrives and he sees, where are all the striped? They're all gone. Instead of confronting Laban and exposing the truth and being honest, what did he say? Diba he said, my honesty will speak for me. But he wasn't honest. He saw all the striped goats were gone. He know he was being cheated. He know he was being manipulated. He knew all of it. But instead, in verse 36, Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. In his mind, I'm going to outmaneuver you. You think you're better than me, I'm better than you. So both of them are preoccupied with trickery. Verse 37, then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees. These are trees basically with branches that have very, very obvious colors. And when you strip them, the colors inside are different from the colors outside, okay? So he peeled the white streaks in them, exposing the white of the stick. So outside is usually either brown, dark brown, or even blackish sometimes. Inside is white, so he kind of peeled to make them look striped. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is the watering places where the flocks came to drink. Since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks. And so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. So Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. So whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding or mating, Jacob would put the sticks so that they might breed near the sticks. But if the weak sheep of the flock would breed, he would not do that. He would not put the sticks there. All right? Thus the man increased. So Jacob increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants, male servants, camels, and donkeys. So what was happening here? Jacob knew that Laban hid all the striped. And so what did Jacob do? There was a superstitious belief. It's kind of like our belief today. You know, when a woman is pregnant, when a girl is pregnant, they say, you should drink a lot of white milk so that the skin of the baby will be white. I don't know if you've heard of those superstitions. Or why is there like why is there a birthmark that looks dotted? And then people say, because when her mommy was pregnant, she kept craving mango seeds. And so mongos are dotted, therefore she has a dotted birthmark. You know, or if a pregnant lady would eat ube, then there would be the complexion would be darker skin. Or because she kept drinking chocolate milk, so that's brown, and so the skin would be darker. So these are superstitious beliefs. And so Jacob thought they had their own shepherding superstitious beliefs that if animals were mating in front of striped branches, they would give birth to striped baby goats and baby lambs. And so whenever there was a strong male and female breeding, so Jacob would get the stronger ones and would breed them, and he would put the striped sticks and branches, hoping that they would give birth to strong, striped, and spotted offspring. So if it was the weaker ones, then Jacob would not give the ano. So in the end, he wanted all the stronger ones to be striped. All right? So basically, what did they do? Laban technically did not lie. Laban said, yes, that's the agreement. I'm just going to manipulate the situation to outsmart you with the agreement. Jacob technically also did not lie. He manipulated the situation, the breeding process, so that he's still honest. So both Laban and Jacob are guilty of the same thing. And what is this when it comes to manipulation? One of the marks of manipulators is this. They will rely on technicality to appear honest on the outside while manipulating the situation in the inside. So, what is a very common example of this? Technically, I'm not gossiping. We're in a prayer meeting and I'm just sharing a concern. I'm just genuinely, sincerely worried for so-and-so and these people. So let's pray for them because their issues are the following. So technically, I'm not gossiping, but really the intention was to gossip. Right? So technicalities. So last week, we're going to recap last week and then we're going to talk about this week. Because envy and manipulation are like very close cousins. Alright? They're like siblings. Last week, we talked about the examples of envy. What were they? How do you know if a person is an envious person? People like envious people are overly ambitious, quarrelsome, competitive. They put others down. They always have something to prove. Today we're talking about the marks of manipulation. What are they? They will use God to get what they want. They're not afraid. They dare use God's name and religion to get what they want. They will use people and lip service and abuse people just to get their agenda. They're preoccupied with schemes, strategies, trickery. They're itching for a piece of the pie, and everything should go to God, but they want their own piece of that pie. They audaciously declare that they are honest and they have integrity. They are inconsistent. Their words and actions don't go together. They rely on technicalities. They will appear innocent to everyone except the ones they are victimizing. Jacob and Laban both knew that they were both manipulators, but they only knew that about themselves and each other to each other. To the rest of the world, they look innocent. Laban can say, the agreement was all the spotted, do you see any spotted in my flock? No. But actually, he hit them. Only Jacob knew. To the rest of the world, Laban was innocent. Jacob was the same. He said, well, technically, I didn't break the rules, but actually, he manipulated the breeding process. Right? So I'm going to read a few other verses, all in the New Testament, because again, the New Testament explains, the Old Testament illustrates. All right? So let me read a few verses. First, two verses from James. James chapter 1 verse 22 says, be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Verse 26, James 1:26 says, if anyone thinks he's religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. So lip service, flowery words, but they're not doers of the word. They don't bridle their tongues. Their religion is worthless. Matthew 6:24 says, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Now, of course, that extends. You cannot serve God and lust. You cannot serve God and greed. You cannot serve God and pride. So whatever you're serving, if it's not God, you will end up despising and using God to further your greed, your money, your lust, your pride, your whatever it is. Okay? 1 John 4 verse 20 says, if anyone says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. So, Laban, Jacob, both guilty. It's your God who blessed me. And Jacob says, it's the Lord who has blessed you through me. But actually, they hate one another. They're manipulating one another, hurting one another, trying to trick and outmaneuver one another. They're both liars. They both claim to serve God in some way, but neither of them truly love God. They're liars. Matthew 15, verse 7 to 9. You hypocrites! Well did Isaiah prophesy of you when he said, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. So people who use lip service for God, but don't really serve God in their actions, they're hypocrites, they're liars. Lip service. Lastly, Titus verses 15 to 16 says this, to the pure all things are pure, but to the defiled and unbelieving nothing is pure. Both their minds and their consciences are defiled. They profess to know God, but they deny Him by their works. They are detestable, disobedient, unfit for any good work. No matter how many quote-unquote good works they seem to be doing, how religious they sound, they profess to know God. But if their works, they show that there is hatred for one another, there's manipulation, there's deceit, there's all of that stuff, then all their good works will be burned like chaff. They're unfit for any good works. This is the kind of works that Jesus will say to people when they say, did we not prophesy in your name, do miracles in your name? Did we not Bible study in your name, do discipleship in your name, counsel in your name, blah, 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 blah? And Jesus would say, away from me, you workers of iniquity. You habitual sinners, you non-stop sinners, I never knew you. So you may have known about me, but I never knew you. All right? Now look at Genesis 31 verse 1. Now everything else we're going to talk about here will be just more of them being guilty of the same marks of manipulation. So 31 verse 1, we'll go through them quite quickly. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's, he has gained all this wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and he said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know I have served your father with all my strength. Just a note, that word strength is also translated as, I have served your father with all sincerity. Meaning, I was sincere with your father. I was honest with your father. I had integrity with your father. Did he really? But let's continue. Verse 7. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. So what is he doing? Lastly, manipulators, they will use untrue things, slanderous things. They will have a mudslinging to ruin the reputation of those they are trying to manipulate. Verse 1, Jacob heard the sons of Laban saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's. Is this really true? Of course not. Their father actually grew more wealthy because of Jacob. They gained profits, herds, cattle, lambs, goats because of Jacob. So this accusation against Jacob was a slanderous accusation. It was actually Laban who manipulated Jacob for 7 additional years. Right? Jacob, on the other hand, slandered Laban. Jacob treated Laban, just as Laban treated Jacob with a kind of favor, and because he had something to gain from Jacob, but the moment that his schemes no longer worked, the lip service and the false favor also disappeared, and he despised Jacob. So when Laban no longer had anything to gain from Jacob, he despised Jacob. Jacob, he had much to gain from Laban because he thought he could outwit Laban, but now that the favor was gone, the lip service was gone, the people were against him, he now despised Laban. So both of them slandered each other with their people. So manipulative people are kind to you as long as you're useful, and then they will despise you when they have nothing else to gain from you. And then they will start to attack you. Let's take a look at what Jacob did. It's legitimate that God commanded Jacob to return to Canaan. That's legit and it's true. But the end does not justify the means. Jacob mixes truth with lies. I'm going to read verses 10 to 13, and then we're going to take a look at what Jacob did. Okay, so let's read 10 to 13. Here's what Jacob said to Rachel and Leah. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were stripped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob! And I said, Here I am! and he said, Lift up your eyes and see, all the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land, and return to the land of your kindred. So what did Jacob do? He mixes truth with lies. What's true is that God commanded him to return to Canaan. It's also true that Jacob really did work hard for Laban, obviously, because there were lots of flocks and all of that grew. It's also true that God redeemed Jacob via the breeding of the herd. It wasn't because of the superstitious branches, it was because of God, all right? Just as the reason for why there was a birth was not the mandrakes, but because it's God who gives life. So God may answer prayers even if we do superstitious stuff, but it's not the superstitious stuff, it's God, all right? But what are the lies? Jacob said, Laban changed my wages 10 times. That's not true. Jacob also exaggerated God's protection. All that the angel said was that the flocks were striped and spotted because God wanted to redeem you from all this mistreatment. But what did Jacob say? He said, the spotted shall be your wages. Then all the flock bore spotted. And if he said, so Jacob was saying, Rachel, Leah, if your father Laban had said that all of the spotted would be your wages, everything would have been spotted. If your father would have said this, God would have done this for me. In other words, I'm so favored by God. Look at how God is treating me. Look, all the events, so the exaggeration is there. The events in my life and all the stuff I'm trying to accomplish, they're all happening because I have God's favor. You see that? So there's a kind of manipulation happening there. All right? So, I kind of was researching this, and Rainey helped me research this as well, and we Googled some stuff. And this is from healthline.com. Let me read, quote unquote. So, open quotes. Emotional manipulators are masters at altering reality. They with lies, fibs, or misstatements in order to confuse you. They may exaggerate events to make themselves seem more vulnerable or more credible. They may also understate their role in a conflict in order to gain your sympathy. Furthermore, they don't accept accountability. Emotional manipulators will never accept responsibility for their errors. Or they will accept them, so end quote, and let me add, or they will accept them yet shift focus to others. Isn't that what Jacob is doing? Jacob never said, I got branches, I did this. He never accepted responsibility for what he has done to Laban. All he's saying are the stuff that Laban has done to him. Or if he admitted it, it's more, but look at what God is doing. Right? So that is the or some marks of manipulation. Jacob was also inconsistent. Jacob towards Laban, when he was facing Laban, he said, I'll stay. When he's facing his wives, I will leave. So he was inconsistent with his words. One word to Laban, a different word to Rachel and Leah. Now look at the response of Rachel and Leah. Verse 14. This is the last part of the sermon, verse 14 to 16. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, Is there any portion of inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. So, what happened here? First, Laban treated his daughters as goods for sale. Laban used his daughters as bargaining chips, and then he used their inheritances. And the consequence, they had no reason to give Laban any loyalty or even honor. In fact, later on, you will find out, we'll get to that Rachel actually stole even Laban's gods, his property. Okay, so essentially, we talked about this last week. Using manipulation or deception to keep the loyalty and commitment of people is self-destructive. And today we see the effect. Laban used manipulation and deception, and he used Rachel and Leah. So the effect today, Rachel and Leah have no loyalty towards their manipulative father. And the effects don't happen instantly or instantaneously, but they will eventually happen. So last, to end the sermon, verses 17 to 21, I'll read them straight. Jacob arose and he set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob tricked Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to flee. He fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. So let's conclude. What can we learn from this huge text? First, remember, just a reminder, the New Testament explains, the Old Testament illustrates. So these character studies bring to life the gospel truths and principles we find in Scripture. So from the abstract principles we find in the New Testament, we find illustrations and examples in the Old Testament. This makes the truths relatable, relevant, and applicable. I wanted 3 R's, but I couldn't find a third R. So relatable, relevant, and applicable. So what are some symptoms of manipulative people? There are 10 that we find here. What are the marks of manipulative people? Number 1, they will use God and religion to get what they want. Number 2, they often use lip service to butter you up. And as long as you're useful, they will keep using nice words. They will use you as tools, and their kindness will last only as long as your usefulness to them lasts. Once your usefulness is gone, so will their kindness. Number 3, manipulative people are preoccupied with the schemes and strategies. Number 4, manipulative people are itching for their piece of God's pie. Whatever should go to God, they want for themselves. Number 5, they audaciously proclaim that they are honest, that they have integrity, and are trustworthy. Number 6, they are inconsistent with words and actions. Sometimes their words are inconsistent with other words. So they say one thing to person A, they say a different thing to person B. Or their actions are inconsistent with actions. They show this kind of action to person A, and they show a different action to person B. Or their words are inconsistent with their actions. They say one thing, but they do the opposite. Either way, they're inconsistent with words and actions. Number 7, they're heavily reliant on technicalities. They try to use technicalities to their advantage. Because of that, of course, obviously connected to it is they try to appear innocent to the rest of the world and to everyone else, except to the people that they are victimizing. Number 9, for them, the end justifies the means. As long as I have a goal, come hell or high water, by hook or by crook, I will do whatever it takes to get what I want. And lastly, number 10, they will mix truth with lies. These are 10 marks of manipulation we find in this text. Now, what's our application? Obviously, the first temptation is to think, oh, I sure hope so-and-so is here to listen to this. It's for me. It's for other people. In all sermons, I've heard a pastor say this, and every time we listen to a sermon, when a sermon gets painful, we are tempted to think, I know people who are like this. And that's, on some level, that's legitimate, and there are 3 options, of course. We can either confront, ignore, or avoid these people, case-to-case basis. But that's not the real application. The real application is for us to ask ourselves, am I like this? Do I have these 10 symptoms? Do I have any of these 10 marks of manipulation? Am I a manipulative person? If yes, we have to ask ourselves, why do I do these? What am I serving? If it's not, I know it's not God because I have these manipulative tendencies. Therefore, what am I serving in place of God? In Laban's case, it was greed. In Jacob's case, well, obviously it was also greed. For the people I've mentioned earlier, silang Joel Osteen, silang Todd Bentley, etc., different things for different people. What are our tendencies? What do we desire more than God? Because at the end of the day, when we think of the gospel, Christ died for these sins that we are trying to serve from time to time today. We say, oh Lord, we love you. Oh Lord, our hearts belong to you. But then there's so many temptations that bombard us every day. we have to put to death these desires and go back to the gospel and go back to the Lord and say, Lord, you died on the cross for my sins. What are those specific sins in my life that if you have died for them, I have to keep killing them as well for my own sanctification? Not for salvation, but for my sanctification. I want to continuously die to self to continue to honor your death on the cross for me. And that way, I can truly say I have integrity, that my honesty will speak for me, that I will continue to serve the Lord, and I will try to be as blameless as I can, not just for the world to see, but for my God. And that's really the things that we learn from character studies. We see the good examples in character studies and we try to emulate them because they are pro-gospel. And we see all the anti-gospel characteristics in character studies and we avoid them and we repent of them when we see them in ourselves so that we can honor God, honor Christ, and honor the gospel as well. So that's it for the sermon today, guys. Let's pray.